Hello, Frank. Here are your carburetors that you sent back to us to recheck after you say we rebuilt these in 2002. So that's 15 years ago, and they've just been sitting on the shelf since then. And you want us to double check to make sure that they had survived sitting on the shelf. And I'm happy to do that for you. What I was stunned about was the plating had held up so nicely. Just looks like, and the glass beading, it looks like these things were just rebuilt last week instead of 15 years ago. So I'm going to do a double check for you on them and how they're doing. And again, I want to go over all the installation and tuning for you in case you don't have that video that I did 15 years ago, which I think at that time I probably would have been doing on VHS. Anyway, let's go over the usual. In terms of installing the fuel lines on the carburetors, you're going to want to use 2 wrenches, one to stabilize the fuel fitting in the float bolt cover, and the other one to wrench on the swivel fitting on the fuel lines. And what you want to do is stabilize this fitting in the float bolt cover so that you don't put any stress on it when you're twisting here and potentially mess up the threads right there. And a lot of people ask about installing the carburetors, how difficult it is to get to everything. Well, especially the bolts underneath. Yes, it is difficult, and what I suggest are the 1/4" drive universal sockets. Now, you sent these originally with the intake manifold attached, which is a novel idea. It's not the way I don't mind you doing it like that, but we've often found it's better just to do the intake manifold first and then install the carburetors. But if you're going to do the intake manifold with the carburetors, then these are going to be very important for installing and getting to the self-locking copper coated nuts that hold the intake manifold and exhaust manifold onto the head. And this may be a little shallow, so you may step up to a 3/8" drive universal socket attached. Either way, these are great for doing the job. Now then, before you completely tighten up the carburetors and get them in place, what you want to do is have them loose on the intake manifold, so the carburetors will actually wiggle up and down a little bit. And then what you're going to do is install your air log. Let's see if this one will even fit here. Okay. Yeah, this one will not fit either. So what you want to do is install your air log and then go in and tighten up the bolts holding the carburetors to the intake manifold. Just enough to where you can, when you pull this off, carburetors don't shift, and then you go in there and tighten up all your bolts underneath there, and then recheck to make sure you can slide your intake manifold off and on, because nothing worse than getting everything installed, trying to install this intake manifold, and it will not fit, and you got to go in there and start unloosening things. Let's see, we got cold carburetors, and let's go over things while it's quiet. Alright, these are the idle mixture screws. This is the second barrel of each carburetor. That idle mixture screw is closed off, and this is the only one you're going to use for tuning, and you're going to adjust this one in and out until the carburetors idle the best. Your G55s right here, the idle jets, those are the only thing that control idle. So if the engine will not idle, one of these is clogged. And again, since it does not idle on the second barrel, this is a dummy. This is just holding, filling a hole. So, and the same thing with this carburetor here. Here's the first barrel. Here's the second barrel. And again, this is closed off, and this is not doing anything. So, if the engine will not idle, one of these or both is clogged. And all you have to do is unscrew it. Real straightforward job. You just unscrew it. Get it out of there, and you'll see you've got a very, very teeny orifice. That's 0.4 millimeters, I believe. No, 0.55 millimeters, and it's very teeny. So you just need to blow it out, or maybe push a little toothbrush bristle through there, or even a very thin wire, and clean it out. And oftentimes you won't even be able to see what was in there. So your next, then you will be, once you get the car idling, you will disconnect your throttle linkage so that the carburetors are running independently of each other, and you can tune them accordingly. And then for getting your airflow adjusted, you're going to use your idle screw settings, your idle speed setting screws to adjust the airflow. And you're going to make sure that we always make sure our choke's operating, and these are. And let's see, and you'll also notice that as I move the choke here, the throttle linkage moves, and this is tied together, so as you choke the carburetors, it artificially increases the idle. So that's part of what your cold starting and choke mechanism is doing. And let's see, I think we might as well try starting some carburetors. Oh, that's right, synchrometer. You need a synchrometer for adjusting these carburetors now, not once I send them to you, they'll be certainly adjusted, but you know, in the next 15, 20, 30 years, at some point you're going to need a synchrometer. You can get these online, and just, it's called a SYN, see if I can hold this up here where you can see it, synchrometer, SYNCHRO. And the unit that you want is the BK 1 through 35 kilograms per hour. And the reason for getting this specific model is because this one right out of the box fits perfectly on the carburetors. Okay. Now what I like to do is make sure you got fuel up to the carburetors. That's where you use your priming lever. So we'll make sure we got fuel. Alright, and then I will probably goose the throttle a couple of times. Alright, got some little juice going in the carburetor throat. Switch on. Choke. Alright, let's see what we got. Obviously I flooded it, so that's part of the fun of learning how your carburetors work and what they like and what they don't like. So see if I can unflood them here real quick. Well, it's so warm out today. I did not need the choke, obviously, but part of what the choke does, as I said, is gives you your fast idle. So we're gonna fast idle it a little bit, and then we're going to warm it up because you cannot adjust these carburetors until the engine is warmed up. And in your climate, I bet you're going to never need the choke. Just a couple of lifts of the throttle and hit the starter switch. You see I'm backing off on the choke and the idle speed, and it will idle a little bit low until it gets warmed up. So I'm going to idle it a little bit faster just to get the process speeded up. What we're waiting for is our thermostat to open up. You'll see that in a little bit. Our thermostat is opening. You see the temperature stabilizing. Okay, now we can tune some carburetors. Although I have a tack set up on the engine, it's not accurate. So I'm using my very cool Craftsman engine analyzer. So we will check that in a little bit. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to disconnect the carburetors so they're running independently of each other. Make sure you don't let this lever open up and start running away with you, the excessive RPM. So we're going to start with balancing our airflow, and we're going to do that with our synchrometer. And obviously I've already adjusted these, but if they're not in adjustments, you make sure they're running pulling the same amount of air. So we got between 3.5 and 4 here, and between 3.5 and 4, and and let's say that idle is too low. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and adjust the idle speed screw. Let's go up a half a turn and do the other one half a turn. Alright, now let's see what we got here. So we went from 3.5 to 4 3/4 there, and 4 3/4 there, and that's because both screws have the same thread pitch, and if you screw them both the same amount in or out, you will get the same results. So we're good there. Now then, what we're going to do next is our idle mixture screw, and what we're going to do is it helps to watch the tachometer while we do this. Now we can switch to the low side. Alright, so I'm going to, hang on a minute, let me raise that seat up, my chair. What I did is I raised this up higher so you can see the RPM, and while I adjust the mixture screw up here, I'm going to be watching down here. And so right now we're looking right here. This is the RPM, low side. We're running about 700 and some RPM. So we're going to make sure that's optimum RPM range. So I'm going to screw the mixture screw in, and you see we're dropping RPM, losing RPM. Screw it back out. Up above 750. I'm screwing it out and nothing's changing. So we don't need to go any further. Stick right there. Got a little bit more increase there, okay. Same thing on the second carburetor. We got to see where I am for starters. Alright, now check our RPM as we screw in the screw. Alright, dropping RPM as we screw it in because we're decreasing air fuel flow. Now backing it back out, getting our max RPM. Now it's screwing it out and not getting any change, so we're going to screw it back in a little bit. And you see we picked up about 50 RPM by doing that. Now we can go back and let's say we don't want, well, actually that's an ideal RPM range right there, idle speed, so I'm just going to leave it alone. But if you wanted to change it, you can come in back here and you do your idle screws up or down to where you want it to idle. And then your next job, let's see, I skipped one part here. You want to make sure the second barrel is closed and the second barrel butterflies are not pulling any air. And I'm pushing on the second barrel counterweight right back here, pushing on this with my thumb to make sure it's closed. So we're at 2 or less, which is what we want. Let's come over here, check this guy out. 2 or less, that's what we want. Now, next thing you want to do is you got your turnbuckle right here, and you're going to adjust this throttle rod up and down until you can get it in exact position to snap this ball in place, and nothing changes. Nothing changes. And that is all you get to do. Even if you wanted to do any more, you couldn't do it anymore. And you see we picked up a little bit on the RPM, 750, bouncing up to almost 800. Picked up a little bit as we cleared the engine. For 15 years old, those are some really nice carburetors. I'll do a hot start. Do a hot start. Thank you for letting me check these over for you and confirming that we did some pretty damn nice work. Those are really nice carburetors, and you should have great success with them. Obviously, if you have any questions and need any help, any support, let me know. Oh, that's right, I was going over one other thing. This little jam nut right here, screw, adjusting screw and jam nut, what these do is adjust this lever up and down for your choke. And this choke mechanism is just the worst. Okay, you got the choke pull on the dash, so you got to pull your cable, which is like 3 feet of cable going through the spiral wound housing, and you got your plastic sheath on it. So make sure those are pulled nicely and smoothly, and if need be, dribble oil down them. And if you have trouble getting oil into the cable assembly, go to your bicycle store and get an oiler, bicycle cable oiler from them, or from motorcycle store, or online, and those will help you oil those cables. Anyway, so now you've got your steel wire coming straight down and attaching to these cables, to these levers, and you can move the levers up and down a smidge to help line up that steel cable. And of course, what you're going to do now is you want to operate the choke. So what you're doing is you're pulling straight up while these levers are trying to make an arc coming this way. At the same time you're doing that, you are pulling against a spring down here, and all your throttle linkage all the way here and all the way to your foot feed, and so that's why the choke is very hard to pull. You can take some pressure off of it by pushing on the accelerator pedal first, and then it makes it easier to pull the choke cable. Anyway, all that needs to be checked because once again, this is just like a really crappy idea to be pulling up in an arc with a cable going straight up and down. So anyway, that should get you squared away in terms of carburetors. They're really nice carburetors. Thank you for letting me check them, and keep in touch.